The assassination of Iran's top general Qassem Soleimani in a US airstrike has pushed both countries to the brink of war. But it's not the first time. Over the last 4 decades, several key moments have defined the tense relationship between the US and Iran. In 1979, a popular uprising overthrew the last Shah of Iran, Mohammad Reza Pahlavi. He was seen by many as an oppressive ruler, brought to power with the help of the CIA and supported by the US. When Ayatollah Khomeini returned from exile to lead the country under its new Islamic revolution, he severed ties with the US, calling it the Great Satan. That same year, thousands of students, backed by armed revolutionaries, stormed the US embassy in Tehran, holding more than 50 US diplomats hostage. Iran demanded the US hand over the ousted Shah so he could stand trial, but the US refused. Instead, it imposed a series of sanctions on Iran, which remained until 1981, when a deal was finally struck to release the diplomats. When war broke out between Iran and neighboring Iraq in 1981, the US stood behind Iraq's President Saddam Hussein, providing him with weapons and military intelligence. Leaked CIA documents would later show the US was aware that intel was being used to target Iranian troops with chemical weapons. The war would last 8 years and claim the lives of over 1.5 million people. In 1988, an Iranian passenger plane was shot down by the US Navy over the Strait of Hormuz, killing 290 people. The US said the aircraft was mistaken for a military jet and agreed to pay $61 million to the victims' families. US President Ronald Reagan later wrote a letter to Iran's government expressing his deep regret over the incident.
States like these and their terrorist allies constitute an axis of evil, arming to threaten the peace of the world by seeking weapons of mass destruction. These regimes pose a grave and growing danger.
During his State of the Union speech in 2002, US President George W. Bush named Iran alongside Iraq and North Korea as part of what he called the axis of evil, accusing the countries of funding terrorism worldwide and pursuing nuclear weapons. The hostility between both countries continued, with Iran's leaders accusing the US of trying to push for regime change. By 2010, the UN Security Council passed heavy US-led sanctions against Iran, crippling its economy. After the election of President Hassan Rouhani in 2013, the two countries opened dialogue for the first time in 30 years. 2 years later, Iran, alongside the US and other world powers, signed the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, also known as the Iran Nuclear Deal. Under this agreement, Iran would limit its enriched uranium program, hand over most of its uranium stockpile, and allow international inspection of its nuclear facilities. In return, economic sanctions would be lifted. It was seen by many as a new chapter in US-Iran relations and a victory for international diplomacy, but it wouldn't last.
The United States will withdraw from the Iran nuclear deal.
In 2018, US President Donald Trump shocked the world by withdrawing from the nuclear deal, claiming it was flawed and gave Iran too much power. The move was rejected by the other 6 signatories, as well as by Iran, who maintained it would continue to abide by the agreement. That same year, Trump announced he was reimposing economic sanctions on Tehran, pushing tensions to their highest levels in years. After a US drone was shot down by Iran over its waters last year, the US prepared airstrikes in retaliation, only to be cancelled by Trump at the last minute. Following the killing of Qassem Soleimani, which the US says was to prevent attacks on its diplomats in the region, Iran has vowed to retaliate. It launched missiles at 2 US military bases in Iraq and announced it would no longer abide by restrictions on its nuclear program. Donald Trump responded by promising to impose even more sanctions. But as the two adversaries weigh up their military options, is diplomacy still on the table? Or will tensions finally lead the US and Iran to a point of no return?